Hi guys.
Hi Tom.
Hi.
How we doing?
Good,
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay. Welcome back everyone to TrainAid's fourth podcast now. Obviously Nick and myself are here. We'd like to welcome Vicky along for this one. And today's topic is equality and diversity. It's a popular topic sort of amongst the teaching and assessing courses. And so we're going to go through some ideas of how we might promote it. Yeah?
Absolutely.
So over to you
Great.
first then, Nick, if you want to give us one of yours.
Perfect. My first idea or advice on how we promote equality and celebrate diversity is, as a teacher, you can have an events calendar. So what I mean by that is you can have access to an events calendar which looks at specific days, cultural events, religious holidays. So you as a teacher, you can stay aware, you can stay up to date of these important dates, you can celebrate them, you can let your learners know what events are coming up, for example Black History Month, Ramadan. There's so many cultural days that we can celebrate, and we can acknowledge them, we can celebrate them, we can promote these within our own resources as well. So I think it's not just about the teaching and your teaching topics, but it's also thinking one step ahead as a teacher. Remind your learners about what's coming up. And I think learners will appreciate that. They'll understand about the different values of these holidays or religious festivals and specific days as well. So I think that staying ahead of the game and saying what's upcoming, I think is absolutely key as a teacher.
It's quite interesting as well with our learners at the moment, obviously with Ramadan out in our sort of Etihad with those learners we've got in the Middle East. So obviously it's having an awareness as well of when you're planning, you're sort of we're obviously planning online sort of lessons and obviously deadlines for coursework and that. Obviously during some sort of religious festivals, it's having an awareness that maybe that might affect both the delivery and some of the assessments involved.
I think what's particularly important as a teacher is actually the power of you as a teacher approaching the learner and saying, can I make any reasonable adjustments? So I think that goes a really long way for learners thinking, okay, my teacher understands me and my background, and I think that's important rather than the learner coming to you and as a teacher. The other way around I think is a lot more powerful. So it all goes down to thinking ahead, being a good planner, and I think having an events calendar is really, really key. And this is just on the internet. You can just do a search, you can see specific websites where they have a long list of the different celebrated days, religious festivals, and you can just put those onto your own personal teaching calendar, and you can once again keep your learners up to date of those different events as well.
Okay,
That's my first bit of advice.
Right, thank you, Nick.
Great.
Just gonna pop that there.
Vicky, you going to give us your
Yeah,
first
sure.
one next?
I think what Nick's saying is all about being valued and sort of valuing your learners and feeling valued. Like you say about having the calendar there so they can access it rather than being embarrassed about coming to you. That's what it's all about. So my next one is linking on from that very nicely. It's about diverse resources. So it's really easy, I think, to use the resources that you've always used. And I can remember working with teachers who would definitely put out kind of worksheet 2, week 3, and they've been using that worksheet for years. And it's just making sure that your resources reflect and value the learners that you've got. So if you're looking around at your classroom and your group in front of you or the group that you're training, then you're obviously going to have loads of people with different backgrounds, culturally, different experiences, different genders, different faiths, and you want your resources to reflect that. If you've got, some pictures in your presentation that are literally sort of just white men or European faces, it's not going to be reflecting society as a whole. It's not valuing your learners, and it's quite lazy. So I think we can all be really guilty of it as well. You're delivering a training course sort of month after month. You've been doing it for years. It's successful. It's going well, and then you look at your resources and you suddenly think, this is really not great for the group I'm training now and potentially any group. So I think it's just having an awareness and getting somebody else maybe to have a look at your resources and say, what do you think?
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, getting obviously colleagues to look over them. And it's true when you have been delivering a course for a long time. Maybe some of our courses, we look at them, don't we? Think, oh, we need to update this because it's ever changing as well, isn't it? And like you said, it can depend on the group that you're teaching. Just to make.
I totally agree. I think that it's always good to get another set of eyes on your resources and what you think is crystal clear. But when you show it to a colleague, they see it from a different standpoint, a different point of view, and that can only be a positive thing. Getting them to share their thoughts, and you can obviously make tweaks and changes. But like you said, Vicky, I mean, Britain is a multicultural society. We have to move with the times for absolutely to be positive, to be diverse. Britain's never been a monoculture. It's always been like multicultural, and therefore we need to reflect that within our resources. Absolutely.
Yeah, so that's our first one.
Okay, thank you. So the first one that I've got up is initial assessments. So obviously what I'm sort of getting at of initial assessments is it's important to get to know your learners as soon as you can, and obviously with initial assessments it can be sort of phone conversations, interviews, application forms, but then obviously when you actually get them in the classroom in front of you, you obviously want to embrace the diversity of the learners that you've actually got, but some of their learning needs, so obviously make sure you do promote equality and diversity. You actually need to find out, so that comes with the initial assessments. And a lot of things within teaching do come back to thorough initial assessments. I always make an effort to get to know my students as soon as possible, even if it's a short course, get their names, find out what makes them tick, what motivates them, find out a little bit about them, their backgrounds, their cultures, and then obviously with that you can then support them and put things in place that suit them essentially. So I think initial assessments are quite an important part, and it might be, you ask about individual learning requirements, disabilities, and if you've got to make some adaptation, I don't know, maybe someone's asked for the handouts to be on a different coloured paper. If you haven't done an initial assessment or sort of joining instructions or found out a little bit about or asked the question, then it makes it difficult to do that, doesn't it, once you've sort of started. So one of our key questions that we ask all of our learners at TrainAid is, have you got any individual requirements that we should be aware of? Obviously we need things like names, dates of birth to register with all in bodies, but that question in particular is the one real question we want answered, isn't it, before people come on courses, because we want to give everyone an equal chance of success, essentially, and so it is important. Sometimes maybe people slip through the net of initial assessments and then they're in front of you, but it doesn't have to be a formal thing. It can, obviously you can then do an icebreaker that doubles up as an initial assessment to try and find out if there's anything you should be aware of, and sort of requirements with your learners.
Absolutely, 100%. I think that what I found on a lot of our courses, I think the learners are so grateful for having a robust initial assessment, and many say, wow, I've never been through this before, I've never been through an initial assessment. So from perhaps their school days or previous training they've encountered, they haven't had any type of initial assessment, whether it's an application form or a teacher just saying to them, how do you like to learn best? What makes you tick? How do you like to learn? So I think, again, it just goes back to that one-to-one approach, building that positive relationship from the start. And if they say they're fine, they don't need any support, that's absolutely fine. As long as you've asked the question, how can I support you? And then you've done it. That's your initial assessment.
It's not just because you've done initial, so it's not foolproof. Obviously, some people might not want to tell you to start with, and then maybe when you develop rapport and that with them, you find out more about individuals. But certainly having the process in place to
And that makes you more prepared for it as well, because if they haven't told you, you notice something, then you've probably got other resources for other learners that you can use.
Yeah, we've had examples in the past, you know, where we've had someone asked to go and see a venue the day before, so they wanted to, because of anxiety, they wanted to know where it was, where the classroom's going to be, where they're going to sit, and you know, so things like that. Obviously, you can accommodate and you can help, but you have to obviously ask the question in order to gather the info. But, yep.
Super, I think that's a great one. My next one is newsletter. So I wrote this because I think it's important to have perhaps both a staff newsletter and also perhaps a learner newsletter. So coming from a school and a college background, we used to celebrate the success of our learners and also staff members within a newsletter. So it's not just about the teaching, it's not just about teaching your subject, but it's about your personal side as a teacher to kind of to buzz up and to support your learners. It could be anything to do with their hobbies and interests, such as the Duke of Edinburgh Award. If someone within your class has achieved their Gold Award, for example, giving them a pat on the back and saying to the class, you know, do you know about so-and-so, they've achieved their Gold Award. Or it could be a celebrity run, if a staff member has achieved the London Marathon or something like that, you know, saying very well done, that's fantastic, you've ran for a charity. So I think it's diversity in my mind is recognising that everyone's different, everyone's got their own hobbies and backgrounds, and I think as a teacher, once again, you're building that rapport, your support to your learners and just saying, well done, that's fantastic, I believe in you. And I think that goes a really long way as well. So it's not just about, you know, getting into the classroom and, you know, getting involved within your teaching. Of course, that's the main thing, but also showing an interest in your learners, like hobbies, their interests, their, you know, what they do outside of the lesson. But the same for your fellow staff members as well. You know, things like Macmillan coffee mornings as well are a great way to get to know your fellow staff members. It's all for a good cause. But I think some type of staff newsletter, I think, is quite key there to promote cohesion, both with your learners and your staff members as well.
Yeah, celebrate obviously people's achievements, and like you said, it doesn't have to be all to do with education within the courses, the qualifications. I think that's
seeing individuals, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. It's like is it like you say, like the word genuine? So you a good teacher genuinely wants to be there, but they're actually genuinely interested in their learners as well, getting to know them, and you can imagine within a class the diversity of people's interests and hobbies and backgrounds, and that is immense. So sort of, you know, promoting and celebrating all that is obviously it's fantastic.
I mean,
practice.
Even on our level 3 awards in education training course, one of the things we first ask within the initial assessment, okay, tell me about your hobbies and interests, because that's usually forms part of their micro teach on day 3 of the course. And as a teacher, you can offer support and advice and say that's a fantastic idea. And I think people, especially with the micro teach, they need that reassurance, because they think, oh, that micro teach idea is not that good. But we actually say, no, that's fantastic. That hobby, that interest that you've got, run with it, because that they are better than they think they are. You know, you know, they need that confidence, is what I'm trying to say. So yes, in a nutshell, I think a newsletter is really good to celebrating just the individualness of your learners and your staff members. Wonderful.
Great.
Okay,
so I'm sticking with resources again, so coming back to resources, but linking very much to the initial assessment really, with equal access to resources. So what I mean by that is I started off in primary education, and I learned a lot from the old-fashioned practice of your learners on the kind of bottom table, the lower ability table, however they used to be referred to, would be the only people in the room with resources, like physical resources, like blocks or writing frames or anything that you could find, or counters. And actually that's really useful for their learning, but it makes them feel terrible, generally speaking, because they're the only people in the room with this stuff, and the other kids are going, I don't need that stuff. And then also there are some other kids in the room that would really benefit from it that aren't having access to the resources. So it applies to adults too. You know, if you're delivering a training course and you have got some kind of coloured paper or large font or however else you've adapted your resources in light of initial assessments, just make that available for everybody. There's no stigma in using resources. You know, a lot of people are kinesthetic, practical, hands-on learners. So just let them have that access. Don't make it, this is just for you because you've got this need. You know, it's obviously not the best practice. So hopefully we've moved away from it, but I'm not sure in every context we have. I just think these resources should be available for everyone, and the teacher or trainer should be saying, this is how this can be used. Feel free if it helps you. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Just
Absolutely, yeah.
pick and mix.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, obviously, I'm making sure we make a lot of our resources available, don't we, online as well.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter, you know, we've got online courses, we've got classroom courses, but we share the online resources, the videos, with individuals, because obviously some people may not use them, but other people will when they come to do the assignments and utilise them. So definitely sort of equal access is important, certainly.
Great.
Absolutely agree. Yeah.
Okay, next one I've got is ground rules. So I guess, mine are sort of had initial assessments. Ground rules again comes quite near the beginning. And I guess how much you focus on ground rules depends probably what sort of day you're expecting in the training room to a certain extent. But ultimately what ground rules are about to promote respect, aren't they, really, and create a pleasant learning environment. So when linking it in with equality diversity, I think you need to make sure within the ground rules, everyone generally knows what the sort of environment you're trying to achieve with it, but just sort of making it clear that you want everyone to get involved, you want to everyone to be very discussive and embrace everyone's sort of opinions and and their uniqueness, if you like, and what you're going to discuss, but making sure that people are aware that they need to respect everyone in the room. You need to respect them. It's obviously you put yourself in it as well, and just and making it clear that I guess we call the term sort of you won't tolerate inappropriate behaviour or actions, and it's making it clear that will be challenged. So if you did, I've had it in the colleges where a student said something, often they say something silly because they're immature, they don't even really, they need educating after what's come out of their mouth, but it might be, I'd say to them, that's completely inappropriate, I'll speak to you at the end about it, and people are aware that that's not obviously an option within your environment. So I think it helps to sort of, at the beginning of your training courses, just to spend a few minutes on ground rules, just the general ones, and then obviously hopefully people feel like it's going to be a nice environment. They tend to grow in confidence then if people realise it's the person in charge is obviously going to facilitate it in a nice manner.
They can speak freely.
And then sometimes obviously then people might speak too much and they're like go on, then you've obviously that's your role as a teacher or a trainer to make sure that you keep people on track and you do make sure people don't say things they shouldn't, and I think you see it in courses, people grow with confidence when they realise that it is a pleasant place to voice your opinion and discuss, and so I think that's quite an important one.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think one of the key things I do at the start of my course is get the flip chart paper here and just write classroom contract at the top and just get everyone in the room, just have a Sharpie pen and just write down one rule just on the flip chart, and this is our classroom contract. And then once everyone's written one rule, we look at each of them, we all agree. We then sign and date, we get everyone to sign and date the flip chart paper and say those are our agreed rules. So for our 3-day course or however long the course is, we can't break these rules. That's our contract. And I think there's so much more of a buy-in because it's not a teacher saying these are the rules, it's what everyone has agreed as well. Another thing I like to do is write the teacher rules. And same again, I ask my class, okay, what rules should I follow as a teacher? What would you like from me? And usually the rules are, deliver interesting lessons, to mark work on time, to ask questions, things like that. So I think it's good to have the learners say to you what they want from you as a teacher.
Yeah.
And I think that a classroom contract with agreed ground rules, I think, is a really, really great way of creating a really sort of an environment based on respect and trust for each other. So I think that's a really good thing to do.
Okay, right, your last one then, Nick.
My last one is stretch and challenge activities. Okay, so I think that with stretch and challenge activities, I'm a huge advocate of giving learners the opportunity to further themselves. So there's nothing worse than a learner within your class has completed the activity before time, and they're sat down with their arms crossed and they're bored. So I always say, right, you've got the stretch and challenge activity. So this could be to read the next chapter within the textbook. It could be to assist with your fellow learners. It could be that they have to produce something such as a resource. But I think a good hallmark of a teacher is to not let learners stand still. So I think a great lesson is one that has pace, and ultimately you need to plan ahead and thinking, for my learners who are the most able, they've got something ready and waiting to go on to the next thing. And you can of course embed IT, so there could be a YouTube video that they could watch independently whilst the rest of the class catch up. It could be, once again, within perhaps a news article online that they could read, to do with the classroom content, of course. But it could almost be a bit of a challenge that we say, who's going to go for the stretch and challenge tasks today? And therefore you're promoting this as a positive challenge, and you can almost have a logo on your PowerPoint slides. You could have this in red writing, who's going to go for that challenge. So you're stretching, you're challenging, you're promoting this target, and you're hopefully getting learners to go for more of these activities as well.
Yeah, it was one of the tricky things, I guess, within a class is the differentiation, isn't it, from top to bottom in terms of ability. So it works at both ends, doesn't it? So obviously making sure learners that need extra support, maybe get the one-on-one, maybe you're lucky enough to have facilitators in with you that can help with that, but perhaps not. So yeah, it's getting round to all the learners, and everyone get an opportunity to fulfil their ability. So for some they might never get to the stretch and challenge, but you're going to support them and help them, maybe with extra guidance, just to get the initial work done. And having promoted that sort of environment, where people are keen to push themselves, essentially.
They can still be challenged at their level, can't they?
Yeah, I think what's worked well, it is an activity. It's all too well where someone has finished their activity and you can and say, okay, go and help so and so. But don't do that all the time, because it can get quite boring. So I think it's good to have a variety of these stretch and challenge activities. Yes, classroom is all about teamwork and helping your fellow learners, but try and make it different for the individual, so it keeps them guessing, it keeps them exciting. What is going to be that stretch and challenge activity today?
Okay,
it's my
good.
final one.
To me.
Yeah.
Okay, so this one we're thinking about groups, and when you're planning different activities in different groups, obviously you will have different size groups for different activities, you'll have different combinations of people, but I think in terms of equality and diversity and promoting that, we need to always think about who is in that group. And if you've got a room full of people, whether they know each other or not actually, you need to make sure people aren't just gravitating to people who are just like themselves, because that is kind of human nature, I guess. That's what people do. So you just don't want a group of 5 men, 5 women, you know, whatever it is, and just make sure that it could be culturally mixed, it could be obviously mixed by faith, goes in hand with that, mix of gender, but also mix of backgrounds, experience, what are they bringing. So a group with a mix of different amounts of experience is obviously going to be a lot more successful than we're all beginners here and we're all, you know, we're all over here, we're all doing really well. You know, share that kind of experience. So another way of looking at differentiation, isn't it, of kind of mixed ability, but also mixed backgrounds, mixed gender, mixed culturally. So you have got that kind of representation of what you'd like society to be, a kind of equal groupings where everybody is important and everybody's experience and background is valued. So I think considering that maybe in a different way when you're doing your teaching or your training can be really helpful.
And changing the groups, I guess, as well. We do a lot of group work, don't we, on our courses. You know, it might be a 3-day course, and you know, you could have 10 group activities within that. So changing the groups around so people get to chat and discuss with people from different backgrounds. We get a real range of learners, don't we, on our courses from different industries, different backgrounds. So if you can keep mixing it up, choosing the groups yourself is quite important. Maybe at the beginning you let people choose, then you might get to know the individuals and you could see what would work well for the sort of group activities.
I think that's absolutely key. A great point that Vicky has made there. And you as a teacher, you know, just remember you're in charge, so you have the authority to write down a schedule of these small groups. I think a group of maximum of 3 learners is a very good number. And just as you're going throughout the day, you know, mixing up the names as well. There's also websites where you can have like the random group generators, and I think that is quite good because you can, obviously it takes the pressure off you as a teacher to kind of come up with the groups, and the learners can see it's randomised anyway. So I think that's quite a good thing to do, but definitely mixing up the groups and getting everyone to work with each other at least once is going to promote equality and diversity, essentially.
Absolutely.
Okay, so my last one is learning styles. So what I'm talking about with learning styles is, I guess, an appreciation for the uniqueness of each learner in your group. If you've got 20 students in your class, they're not all going to learn the same way. You know, some of them obviously talk a lot of sports in the background, they're very practical, kinesthetic people. Other people might be visual, others auditory, but you know, we know from VARC learning styles and that people are generally a mix, but you are going to have quite a difference within your classes. I give the example of my history teacher going back to school. We did for the hours lesson is just read from a textbook, going from one person to the next. There's no effort or planning gone into that. It's fine for your read-write learners that take that all in and that's it, they've learned it, but it's no good for, certainly wasn't any good for me. So yeah, you could I think, sort of talking about quality diversity, when you teach a topic, make sure you actually teach it using the different styles. So if I was teaching about the heart and the circulatory system, yes, you can watch a video, yes, you can read about it in a textbook, yes, you can sort of label diagrams, but then sort of if you were thinking outside the box a little bit, we used to then go into the sports hall and use the gym mats as the chambers of the heart, and then get like a human chain with the learners as the blood vessels. And some of them, when you did that, it would click and they'd get it, where they hadn't quite got it from upstairs in the classroom. So, there's lots of different ways of teaching, obviously, in different styles, but it's, I think you make sure that you've got an awareness of that, and a lot of people might lean towards their own preferred style as a teacher, and it's just maybe just checking yourself, thinking on that, and think, can I do this in a different manner? Because often when you teach, you reinforce the topic, don't you, with another activity, so just making sure it's a different style. And over the years, I've also had, students when they're really sort of struggling, and maybe you think, right, how have I taught this? Can I teach this in a different manner? Like if I'm in the classroom, someone's struggling to understand muscle contractions, from the textbook. Can you go into the gym and turn it into a practical setting and demonstrate the principles? So yeah, I think just having an awareness and good sort of inclusive practice is obviously having a varied styles came up earlier, and considering the sort of varied learning styles within the classroom.
I think the biggest thing on that is patience. So having patience as teachers to acknowledge that everyone learns in a different way, a different style. That if you verbalise some instructions, that learners might not grasp it the first time around, and it's trying to figure out ways in which to get that information across. And also, I think reinforcing the language. Try not to say, do you understand that?
Yeah.
Do you understand? Do you get it? So it's trying to figure out ways in which you acknowledge that they have grasped that concept, and trialing different techniques, as Tom said, different environments to experiment with these different learning styles. I think is good. Be open to the different styles of learning.
Okay, so I think that's all of our sort of recommendations sort of covered. Thank you for sharing your ideas with us today, guys. Hopefully you found this useful. Please subscribe to our channel if you haven't already done so. And yeah, we'll be back soon with podcast 5.
Podcast 5.
Yay, thank you.
Thank you, Tom.